Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. For today's episode, we're going to be going over some bullpen trade options for the San Diego Padres. Now, we have seen that their bullpen has kind of been a big-time nightmare lately, so I'm fully expecting the Padres to go and get a right-handed reliever. Maybe they end up getting a couple guys. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to be in the market for, but what I'm hoping for is a high-end right-handed relief option that could potentially close out games if he's asked to do so. So I like the idea of quite a few guys. There's a bunch of guys we're going to go over today. I know Isaac's not with us, but there's a couple guys that he likes that we'll bring up as well. But Chase, who are the names that stand out the most to you, and what would you think that it would take for the Padres to get some of those guys?
So it really depends on if this team is selling, because I know the Orioles are sitting right around 500 right now, and I don't know if they're going to decide to sell their guys or try to build around them. But this guy's on a 1-year deal. His name is Felix Bautista. I know I mentioned him in the live stream a couple days ago. If you haven't seen it, he's basically like Kirby Yates. His fastball's a little flatter than that, but he's been able to locate it pretty well. And then he has the nastiest splitter that I've ever seen. Those two combined, absolutely devastating pitches. He's sitting at a 1.55 ERA throughout the entire year. It's his first year in the MLB. He's had great success. He's been closing out games, pitching some high leverage situation for the Orioles. Kind of fits exactly what we need. He's only going to be on the books for $700,000, cheap contract, 1-year deal. He would be a rental, so he wouldn't cost too much. Maybe a couple mid-tier prospects, depending on what the Orioles want. Another guy, he was on the team last year, and then the whole Adam Frazier thing happened. David Bed, he broke out this year. He's been pitching a lot of high profile innings. He's faced a lot of high leverage situations. He would be nice to have back on the team. However, he has a few years of control with it. Therefore, he'd be more expensive. I don't know what the Pirates would want, just because I don't know the situation of their team very well, but it'd probably just be more like, okay, maybe a higher end prospect and a low end prospect together, if not a higher end and mid tier prospect together. Another guy that I like, he's on the Cubs. His name is David Robertson. He's probably, I would say, the top guy that I want because he has pitched in the World Series. He's pitched in the playoffs for when he was on the Cubs, back in, I believe, 2016, 2018, around there when the Cubs were really good. So he's has the playoff experience. He has World Series experiments. He's been used in high leverage situations. So if we wanted an impact closer that has experience in the playoff setting, I would definitely go David Robertson. I know Isaac really likes Anthony Bass. He's on the Marlins. All these, by the way, are going to be right-handed relievers. He really likes Anthony Bass. I believe he's got a few years of control with them. He's having himself a really solid. I believe he's has either a really low twos or mid ones ERA. Another Oriole, just real quick, is Jorge Lopez. He's been closing out games along with Felix Bautista. They've been kind of flip-flopping. However, Jorge Lopez has had a 6 ERA before this year, so this year, breakout year, he's really good at getting a lot of ground outs. So there's that. I don't know how much I trust it. I like Felix Bautista's stuff a little bit better, but either or, you couldn't go wrong. But it really depends on if the Orioles decide to sell or try to build around the team that they currently have. Wrong button.
You dipped out there for a second. So yeah, I like the idea of adding David Robertson, and he actually wasn't on the Cubs when they had their World Series run, but he does have a bunch of playoff experience. This has actually been his first season on the Cubs, but right now he's sitting at a sub 2 ERA and a sub 1 WHIP, so he's been fantastic. Also, on the last year of his deal, he's 37 years old. The Cubs have virtually no reason to keep him. They are not contending. They're not going to make the playoffs. So he's going to get moved. We also know that the Padres have been talking to the Cubs about a potential Contreras deal, a potential Happ deal. So I think David Robertson being a part of one of those trades makes a ton of sense. I could definitely see him being a Padre. I think, out of all the guys that you mentioned, I think he's probably the most likely to actually end up on this team. And I think that'd be a pretty good ad. Another guy, I didn't hear you bring him up, Michael Fulmer from the Tigers. Apparently the Tigers are they're having a fire sale. So there's a couple of relief options there that could get moved. But Fulmer's, I think, the guy has been brought up the most as potentially being a guy that the Padres would go after. Orioles, I think the Orioles are such an interesting case. I mean, you bring up Bautista, you bring up Lopez as two guys, but they're over 500. They're maybe going to try to compete. I don't know if they're going to buy or sell or what they're going to do at the deadline. But Bautista, I mean, Chase, you're usually pretty money when it comes to evaluating pitchers. So if you want a guy at the deadline, I'm all for it. I know last year we were really pushing hard, go get Sandy Alcantara, and then we've seen the season that he's put together this year. So I like the idea of adding a guy that has similar stuff to Kirby Yates, but throws a little bit harder, has a better splitter. Would be a great ad there. Looking at a couple other guys here, David Bednar. I don't think there's really a big chance that David Bednar would become a Padre just because he's under contract. He has control until 2027. So if you're the Pirates, we've seen that the Pirates have quite a few young guys to build around. I don't think they're going to trade him. I think and typically what you see too around the trade deadline with relievers is guys on the last year of their deal. So I'm expecting that the Padres would. That's why I think it makes a little bit more sense for them to go after a Robertson opposed to going and getting Bednar, who they just traded last year or very recently. So don't really love the idea of that. Chase, did you mention anyone on the Rockies? Because I know Daniel Bard's been an option. I know there's a couple guys on the Rockies that could potentially get moved. And I mean, a change for a relief pitcher, a change of scenery from Coors Field to Petco is probably as good as it gets. But I don't know, any guys like Fulmer, any Rocky that you really like?
I like Fulmer. I just read an article saying, oh, you know how multi-inning relievers kind of win you in the playoffs. Fulmer, if you guys didn't know, was a starter beforehand. He has starting experience, so he might be one of those guys that's really good to go get because, one, he can pitch multiple innings in relief and be really good. However, if you also need an emergency starter, say you go into extra innings and your bullpen's running low and you throw out Fulmer, he can probably bust out 4 innings for you like Chris Matt did last year. Having a couple of those guys in the bullpen, really does you good. We saw Chris Matt last year. I think we mentioned it. We think he was the MVP of the pitching staff because of how much deep and how deep he went into games in relief. It was just something really important for the Padres to have. Daniel Bard, it's an interesting case because, like you said, any change of scene for any Rockies pitcher is always a good thing. Daniel Bard throws hard. He's a sinker ball pitcher. He has a pretty good slider. I just don't know how much I trust the Rockies pitcher. He would be pitching in a much better environment. Petco Park, I think, was rated to be like the friendliest pitcher's park this year just because the whole baseball situation. I think Petco Park allowed like the least amount of home runs per game. It would be a very different change of scenery for him. I know he can throw hard. He has the slider to do it. I'm just afraid he's coming over. He might let up some hard contact, and we'd have the same situation with Rogers, but from now the right side of the mound. I know two other guys that I didn't mention. I know Matt really likes Scott Barlow. He's got a couple of years of control. He's having himself a fantastic year on the Royals. The other guy that on the Royals that I would probably shoot for is Josh Domont. I know he came into the league like crazy a couple of years ago when he was throwing 100 miles consistently, and then he had the nastiest curveball in existence. He's having himself a little bit of a down year. He's at a 3.9 ERA, but he's had a really rough last 7 games. I think he's had a 6 ERA in his last 7 games. If you want to try to buy low on him, I think you could. I do think he's got a couple of years of control along with Barlow. If you want to try to get both of them, like we did with the Mariners, but not try to get anyone else, I think you could do that. If not, a 3-way deal for Merrifield and those two might do you really solid because Merrifield does play outfield. But those two would be high-end relievers. They both have closed out games. They both have pitched in high-leverage situations. They may not have any playoff experience, but that's not entirely a bad thing.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of options, and that's the thing we've been talking about. So there's just so many names that could be available. We mentioned the Orioles as a team that might not sell. Well, there's the Tigers, there's the Rockies, there's the Royals, there's the Cubs. Like there's so many teams that have relievers that are going to be selling. Final kind of question I guess I have for you, Chase, is when we're looking at adding a bullpen arm for you, why would you so much rather see, and because I agree with you, but why would you so much rather see a righty get added than a lefty?
Because our bullpen is all lefties, basically. I mean, we have Palm, Motorhone if he doesn't get traded. We have Castillo. We have Rogers. We have Tim Hill. Righties do we have? Pierce Johnson's hurt. We have Luis Garcia. We have Craig Stammen, which it's Craig Stammen. Robert Suarez is hurt, and we don't know when he's going to come back. We don't know if Johnson's going to come back. We have Michelle Baez, but we haven't really seen anything since he's coming back from Tommy John. He's kind of in the same boat as Castillo, which he could be up at any time, but we haven't seen. We don't know how much he's going to have success in the major leagues. And having another high leverage righty was probably what this bullpen is missing, and is kind of what we need. We need a guy that has experience closing games, and then if you want to play matchups, you can play matchups in the ninth inning and do a closer by committee. I know I mentioned this in one of the live streams, but right now you don't have a defined closer. You have guys who can pitch multiple in basically any situation that's high leverage, but Rogers, I wouldn't trust closing right now. Luis Garcia, he's been consistent, but he's had a couple of those games where he has, I think, nearly a 1.5 whip. He usually allows someone to get on base, if not two people to get on base an inning, which makes it really sketchy, especially for close games. And sometimes, he loses control and gets hard and blows the inning. So, we have a plethora of lefties. We don't have a plethora of righties that can pitch in high leverage situations. That's why, we definitely need to add at least one right-handed reliever.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you there because, we also have potentially Palm coming back. We've seen Motorhone lately. He's looked really good. You have Rogers, like you have Castillo potentially coming up soon. So there's a lot of lefty options. Tim Hill, too. A lot of lefty options, but not a righty that you're really like super dependent on. You could bring up Nabil and Nick Martinez, but those are also guys that, Nick Martinez is also there as a guy that could potentially start for you. Now both of them can kind of be like mid relievers too, even though we've seen them in more high leverage situations. But that's just because the lack of having a guy that's a right-handed pitcher that you really trust in those situations. So I definitely think it would really, really improve this team if you have another bullpen arm that you can heavily rely on. I think a lot of the guys we brought up can fit that description. And there's a couple of guys that are, buy low candidates or maybe have a little bit more control that might be harder to acquire. But even if they decide to go that route, there's a lot of names that are being mentioned here. So I think that's probably going to do it for this episode, but let us know who's your favorite, or if you have a top 3 of like your favorite bullpen options for the Padres, comment those below. But I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Chase, thank you for hopping on, talking the bullpen guys, because I know that you know the pitchers a lot better than I do. So a lot more fun to bounce these ideas off you, but going to do it for today's episode. We will be going live on Sunday. Don't know if there's going to be a video on Saturday. If there's any Padres trades, we'll definitely get a video out. So until then, we'll talk to you guys then. But think Sunday afternoon, and then I think we're going to be doing some type of trade deadline kind of very long live stream on Tuesday, since it's a Padres. I don't know if you know this, Chase, but Tuesday is, for one, the trade deadline. But the Padres also have a doubleheader against the Rockies. So that's going to be a very, very fun day for all Padre fans. So we'll probably do a bunch of content then. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you guys for listening. Also, thank you guys for 2K subs. We hit that last episode. So real exciting stuff there. But we'll talk to you all very, very soon.